Hey, y'all, welcome back to Right at the Wire. A lot of you have made requests about different handicapping possibilities and maybe coming up with some analysis of some different wagering sequences. So one of the things that I've decided I'm going to do is for the Keeneland Spring Meet, we're going to, every day, we're going to try to come up with a different betting sequence or just betting opportunities on each card. So the first one we're going to start with is the late pick four for Friday's card at Keeneland, and it's all stakes, so it looks like a pretty good opportunity. So let's see what kind of ticket we can come up with. The first leg of the late pick four at Keeneland is the Lafayette Stakes, and it's a sprint for 3-year-olds only at 7 furlongs. The first entrant is Gulfport. He is trained by Steve Asmussen. We haven't seen this one since his 2-year-old campaign, and faced some pretty good company, as you can see, Verifying Forte, Blazing Sevens, just to name a couple. So he hasn't been exactly running against weak fields. And he acquitted himself pretty well. The one lone effort at 7 furlongs was in the Hopeful at Saratoga, and it was muddy, but he broke out to the lead, and he was looking really good. He blew the turn, but he's a 2-year-old, and it was September, so we can kind of forgive that. And ended up succumbing to Forte, which again is no sin, and we can't hold too much against him. Obviously, the Champagne proved that he might be better around one turn. The mile was maybe a little too much for him. So this is a comfortable spot. I think Asmussen is showing a lot of confidence bringing this one back at 3 years old in a stakes race. So I think all systems are go. The tab looks good. In particular, he ran a bullet on the 25th, and you never see that from Steve Asmussen horses. So I would tend to think that that's a pretty good sign. I'm not sure if he'll stack up at 3 years old as he did at 2, but I think all systems are go, and I think he's a use. Lugan Knight, we haven't seen since the Gotham, and watched that race again, and there was a lot of cheap speed in that race, and the fractions were pretty quick in the mud. In particular, on the backstretch, he had to check hard, and he looked like he was going to be in good shape, but it just sort of stopped him, and he had to re-rally. I think that's the most important thing, is the fact that he re-rallied, and he kind of took enough out of him, so he only got 5th, but he stayed in the race, and I think that's a good sign. The prior effort on the Jerome was a really nice effort, and was another part of his progression. He had been steadily improving until the Gotham. So I think we could draw a line through the Gotham a little bit. The fact that he's a stalker more than a need the lead type, I think fits very well. And I think that he could factor in this race, particularly because of his running style. So I think he should use. Now we come to Hijazi in the 3-hole. A lot of ballyhoo about this one at 2 years old. You can see he's trained by Bob Baffert, and he's got Johnny V aboard. Incidentally, Baffert and Velasquez are winning at 86% over the last 60 days, so no slouch in the saddle, to be sure. He, obviously 2 turns was not what this one wants. The San Felipe, we belabored it. He just wasn't conducive to him. So I think this is a spot that's much more suitable and comfortable for this one. Now, you can see by his buyers, he towers over this field pretty much, but his class levels aren't necessarily as competitive as some of the others in this race. And so that's really the only question I have, is can he beat a good field? So we'll just have to see about that. And the other thing that you want to think about is the Bafferts on the West Coast really, they haven't been shipping very well, and as witnessed by Fort Bragg in the Florida Derby. And, that field was pretty soft, and you would have thought he could have done a little better than he did. So it's a little bit of a question mark. Sometimes the California buyer numbers are a little gaudy, and they're a little higher, and unreasonably so sometimes, it seems like. So I just have a couple of questions. There's no denying that this one has the speed, and I'm sure they're going to gun him, and he'll be right out on front. And there's a very good chance that if he gets on the lead without a whole lot of challenge, that he could wire this field. So you got to use him for sure. But I do have some questions about him a little bit, so I don't think it's a total lock. Determinedly, we haven't seen since the Risen Star, and that was a track that favored closers that day, as you can see by the Black Sea there. He got out to the lead and obviously faded pretty quickly. Mile and an eighth might be a little too much for him, but the point with this one is, more than anything, is that he has been competing against the better 3-year-olds. He's run at a pretty good class level, and I don't necessarily think this one needs the lead. And I think that's really important in this race. And you can see he broke his maiden at Churchill at 7 furlongs, and he beat Shopper's Revenge and Sun Thunder. The race prior, he lost to Arabian Night. So 7 furlongs is clearly a distance he's comfortable with. I think keeping him off the pace and at the competitive level, and this is a route to sprint, which is always a really nice angle to play. So don't count this one out. And I think you might get a halfway decent price. And I think he's a use more so for the exotics, but under the right circumstances, I could see if he can hang back enough and stay away from the hot pace that he could very well factor late. Corona Bolt, boy, were we all excited about him before the Southwest Stakes, and then crash. Everybody thought he was going to go challenge Arabian Night, and we were just going to be a shootout and see who was best, and he just didn't do it. They decided to try to raid him, I guess, and it just didn't work out at all. It looks like this one is maybe a need the lead type, and if that's the case, then I think he's really up against it taking on Hijazi. The other thing about this one is he really hasn't beat anybody. I think that can't be overlooked here. And this is a big class test for this one. He clearly has some speed, and in the last race he was pretty good against Older, but they had to go to the whip for him to close that one out. And they had been hand-riding him, but in the stretch, Favorite Outlaw was really getting to him. So I don't really like this one for this spot. I think he's going to be an underlay, and I'm going to toss him. Freezing Point is we haven't seen since the Battaglia, and Synthetic didn't agree with him apparently, and he wasn't a factor at all in that race. It was a pretty hot pace for an excuse that he was running on synthetic track, and that's just death around 2 turns. So we can kind of forgive that a little bit. But really the buyers don't stack up with the rest of them. So I don't think he's fast enough. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if they hang him back and maybe he can clunk up late to get in the money, but he's certainly not a win candidate. And for a pick 4, I can't use him. The same can be said for the most part for Hurricane J. Remember him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He was a pace presence and nothing more. When he faced the better 3-year-olds, he was nowhere. And I think this is a class test that he can't meet here. So Hurricane J would be a toss. Second leg of the pick 4 is the 8th race at Keeneland, and it's the Grade 3 Transylvania Stakes. It's a run on turf at a mile and a 16th, and it's for 3-year-olds only. Number 1 is Freedom Trail. He is he's a late runner, and in his last race, which was the first of his 3-year-old campaign, he didn't do bad. I mean, he again improved. As you can see, his buyer progression has been slow but steady, and he got his career high. He closed pretty well against what was kind of a speed favoring bias. Talk of the Nation, I don't think anybody was going to beat him that day. He's a really promising 3-year-old on turf, but most actors in the race as well. But he didn't do too bad. I think he could probably be underneath in the exotics, but I don't consider him to be a win candidate, even with Frankie Dettori aboard. So I would think about him more underneath, but I wouldn't put him on our pick 4 tickets for a win. Webslinger is another late runner. And in the Colonel Liam, he closed against another speed-favoring track in Gulfstream, and he only got to Duden, Colorado. And I tell you, if that had been a mile and a 16th race, I think he would have won. So the added ground here is definitely a plus. You can see he's about to enter his third of his form cycle, third off the layoff, and he just scored his career high after getting his career high debuting in February. So this one is definitely progressing the way you want to see it. and he's a definite win candidate. There is pace in this race, so he will have something to run to, and I really like his chances. So Web Slinger number 2 is on our ticket. And the winner is, did pretty well last year. It looked like he had some promise, but the Texas Turf Mile, he was pretty good, and he got his career high. And you see, he didn't really have a layoff. He just moved right from 2 into 3. But that last race, the Black Gold, was not particularly that great a race, really. And he had some trouble working in that race. I mean, he broke kind of funny, but he really didn't have a whole lot of impact. But the one thing he got going for him is he's 2 for 3 at Keeneland. So he definitely likes the track, and he's running back to a distance which he won at in the Bourbon Stakes back in October. So those two things are positives. I'm just not sure that he's progressing at the same level of some of the other horses in this race. And I don't think he's a win ticket. I can't really see it. So I don't see enough, I guess I should say. So I'm going to toss. Wonderful Justice won the Black Gold. But he just kind of got up at the wire. It was a speed bias on the track, and that it's been notorious. The Fairgrounds turf course wasn't the greatest. Had all kinds of problems with it this winter. And so, I mean, he's 2 for 2, and he's got Brad Cox Trading and Florent Giroux on him. But I just don't see enough here. I think there's others more qualified. And that last race, class-wise, wasn't the greatest. So I'm not going to include Wonderful Justice. Rarefied Air is kind of interesting. He's a Ken McPeak, so we knew it was going to take a little while for this one. His last race in the Rushaway, granted it was on synthetic, but he did debut at 3 years old with his career high, and he closed pretty well in the stretch. The only thing I had a concern is that he seemed to take a little while to get engaged. Now, maybe on turf, that isn't quite such a liability. And you can see he was okay at 2, and he hinted at some promise. So I think going into this race, the fact that he seems to be on a good progression, I think you'll probably get value. I don't really like him for a win candidate here, but I think you might want to think about him for the exotics because he seems to be progressing pretty well, and I think he could get in underneath because there's a lot of speed that'll be backing up. Mi Hermano Ramon is a California import, and that's a red flag to me right away. The California Turf Division is just not very good, and he's got Johnny V on him for this one, and that certainly helps. But Mark Glatt is 0 for 15 with shippers in this scenario, and he's normally really good at sprint to route and 2 sprints to route. You can see he has good numbers, but unfortunately, when he ships them, those go out the window because he's 0 for 15. California horses have not been transferring well to other locations. If you may have noticed in a lot of the Derby preps, they haven't really factored very much, and so that's a big knock against this one to me. His last race in particular, Hector Barrios just doesn't understand how to run on the Santa Anita turf chute. It was really more his fault than the horses, but he really didn't do a whole lot in that race, and because he was in traffic and shuffled back, and there were all kinds of issues. And you can see his buyers really aren't moving forward very much, so I don't see this one as a viable candidate, so I'm not going to include him. Mustache showed a lot of promise last year, and he started with the Indian Summer, where we picked him out as being one that was going to matter, and he did. He had a really nice race, and he damn near won the thing. The Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he built on that, which we always like to see, and it's no shame to finish 4th to Victoria Road and Silver Knot in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He was even leading the race at one point. Coming out this year at Tampa, he ran a nice race in the Columbia, and again, he lost to Talk of the Nation, who's a really nice horse. And so I don't think we can knock him for that. He debuted with his career-high buyer to start his 3-year-old campaign, which we like to see. And Vicky Oliver is 27% switching horses off of Lasix, 3-year-olds, that is. So I think there's some positives here, and I think this is one you definitely want to keep on your win ticket. And with another move forward, I think this one could very well take it down. Candidate we've seen this year has been proven to be a really solid contender on turf. The Dania Beach run wired the field and beat Major Dude. Will say this, it was a questionable ride on the Major Dude's jockey's part because Candidate was just left to the easy lead and just kind of walked home. So, but it still won and still did it with a nice number, with an 86 buyer. Moving to a mile and a 16th in the Kitten's Joy, one of the things that was pretty good about this was that Candidate showed he could rate a little bit. He wasn't completely lead dependent. And he actually came on pretty well, was no match for Major Dude in the stretch, but he did run a pretty good race, and I think that makes him a contender here. He could very well get on the lead because there is speed. The predominant speed contenders are 2 is outside, so I think he may have an advantage in that regard, and I like him to get on the lead, and if he does, I mean, he's a good contender to wire the field, so I think you include Candidate in the mix. Negarock presents a bit of a puzzle to me. Grand Motion is really good with horses off of 90 days off, and this is one of those. But here's the thing. Negarock was a big surprise at 2 years old when he won the Futurity, and he looked like a pretty good turf horse. Breeders' Cup Juvenile, I mean, he finished third behind Victoria Road and Silverknot, so no disgrace there. It was a pretty impressive effort, much to the betting public's surprise at 39-1. But here's the thing. In December, he ran the Eddie Logan at Santa Anita, and you watch that race, and he really doesn't look terribly interested in being there. Now, I know it says willing on his running line, but he had every chance to take that race down, and he really just didn't fire very much at all. It was only a 6-horse field, and I thought it was it stuck out like a sore thumb to me. Now, has been since December. He's had time, and it's possible that he could come out blazing in this race. Now, being just off the pace might be a pretty good place for this one to be. I'm still, I can kind of go either way with this one, but I could definitely see using him. And if you choose to, I wouldn't blame you. I'm a little worried that because of the Breeders' Cup effort, his price might be a little short, but I think he's one you could use on your ticket and be confident with as a win candidate. Mo Visitor just isn't good enough. There's really nothing else to say. You just look; those buyers are way too light. He's run against Major Dude prior and was not a factor in that race whatsoever. So I doubt he will be here. So he's a toss. Carl Spackler is intriguing, very intriguing. This horse, if you watch his maiden win, he blew that field away. When they pushed a button, that was it. It was over. He was a very deserving heavy favorite because he did not disappoint. This is a big step up in class from what he has been running against. But Chad Brown's his trainer, and he's got Tyler Gaffleone on him. I have every reason to believe this horse will either take another move forward or even at the level he's at right now, he could probably win this race. So I think this is one that you absolutely have to use as a win candidate. Dude in Colorado, to be honest, I'll admit I've never really been that fond of this horse from the time he broke his maiden on synthetic. He's kind of a plotter. You see, he likes to run on the front end, and he can rate a little bit, as you saw in the Colonel Liam. But I don't know. This one just doesn't give me that wow factor. Now, Todd Pletcher trains him, and he's got Rod Ortiz on him. And if anybody can find to work out a trip to get this one to win, it's Rod. But he is all the way outside, and he's a front runner. So he's going to have to hustle quickly to get to where he wants to. And I'm just not so sure that that's not going to compromise his chances. Plus, I think there's horses to the inside of him that I like a little better in this spot. If you want to use him, I can't blame you, but I think there's a couple of things that really limit this horse's chances for this race. The third leg of the pick four is the ninth race at Keeneland. It is the Grade 1 Ashland Stakes. It's run at a mile and a 16th on dirt for 3-year-old fillies. And if we look at the field, number one is Pride of the Nile. This is a California import trained by Doug O'Neill, and he's got Frankie Dettori on for his farewell appearance at Keeneland. This one has basically been on Faye's coattails ever since she switched to dirt, which isn't necessarily a bad thing if you think Faye's is a good horse. But the biggest problem with this one is the gait. You can see on a running line continuously, bump start, stumbled, hit gait. She's got major problems getting going. So that when the class levels increase, those type of problems get exacerbated, and it's going to be a lot more difficult for her to compete if that's still an issue. Now, Doug O'Neill this is the kind of spot where Doug O'Neill is sneaky good. Whenever he ships, there's usually a reason for it. And this one, I think, has some ability. I just wonder if she continues to flop in the gate, it's just going to be very difficult for her to be competitive. So for that reason, I would not use this one as a win candidate. But I think underneath it, some decent value isn't out of the question, given the fact that, like I said, Doug O'Neill, when he ships, look out, because usually there's a good reason for it. Wonder Wheel number 2 is 2 for 2 at Keeneland, won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, and certainly it's a track that she relishes, so that's immediately something you have to take seriously. The last race in the Suncoast, there was a heavy-duty early speed bias at Tampa throughout for all the races. So she was kind of up against it, being one that comes from off the pace. However, at the top of the stretch, it looked every bit that she was going to win the race. It didn't do a thing wrong. She rated perfectly. She got right into position. She made her move, and she just couldn't get by Dreaming of Snow. And it was there was some race riding that went on there that made it a little more difficult, but you would like to think that a Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies champion would have a little more in the tank and be able to get by a horse who, frankly, the last time that Dreaming of Snow ran, I can't recall the race, but I know that she didn't do terribly well, or she was beaten. And so that kind of gives me a little bit of a concern with Wonder Wheel. I think she's probably that she needs this start, and it's a good. It should be a good stepping stone to the Oaks, and I think you have to use this one as a win candidate. I don't see any reason why she can't continue to move forward. It looks like she's headed that way. She's training well, so I think she's one that you probably want to use. Guns and Grace's reign came from out of nowhere in the Devona Dale, but really was no factor in the race until she came flying late and kind of clunked up for second at 28-1. It's not often you get Chad Brown at 28-1. We know this. She finished second to Darth Vader, who was 46-1 and looked like a world beater until last week in the Gulfstream Oaks, where around 2 turns, she just hit the wall at the top of the stretch. So that kind of downgrades this race as being a good one to reference. And this one, could get better. Just debuted her 3-year-old year with a career high buyer, but 73 isn't going to cut it for this race. So while improvement is definitely possible, I doubt that she has enough to win this race, so she will not be a use on our ticket. Julia Shining is another one with, she's a full sister to Malathot. Look at those connections: Stone Street Stables, Luis Saez, Todd Pletcher. She's by Curlin with AP Indy underneath. I mean, my God, she advertises Oaks champion. and champion filly. But here's a couple of things about her. First of all, when she at 2 years old, everybody was just blown away by her appearance at Keeneland when she won, coming from way back to beat Positano's Sunset and Roman Goddess. And everyone was like, wow, boy, she really looks like something. Can't wait to see her in more ground. And then she ran the Demoiselle in the slop and rallied from behind, beat Affirmative Lady, who just won the Oaks last week. And, looked, all systems look go for a great 3-year-old campaign. In the last race in the Suncoast, I think we saw what are impediments to this one advancing. And first and foremost, there was a speed bias. So again, it is a valid excuse that she was kind of running against the bias. But here's the thing I noticed, and if you watch the race again, I think it'll be pretty glaring to you. It takes her a long time to get going. Now, she got into the race a little bit sooner than she normally does. So that is improvement from her 2-year-old campaign. But if you look at the way she runs, she needs a lot of ground for her big kick to be effective. She's got just kind of a loping way of going, and she doesn't have that big push-button acceleration. And that really concerns me, particularly in a race like this where there's no early speed. So I think this one would certainly be underneath because she's a late runner. I mean, maybe with blinkers, they get her a little more involved, but I don't think it's going to matter that much because of the way she runs. Remember, Malathaat kind of ran the same way. Had sort of that loping stride and was better at longer distances. So on Oaks Day at 1.1 miles, that might be more to her liking. But I have a feeling this race she's going to end up second or third again. So I'm not going to use her as a win candidate. And consequently, she's not on the ticket. Punch Bowl is really the now filly. She is, Brad Cox, Flavian Pratt. Her maiden effort, she came from a bad start, was able to overcome it and win. And that race has turned out to be a really nice key race. Sacred Wish just finished second in the Gulfstream Oaks. And so that validates her performance there. Her follow-up in the optional claimer, the really impressive thing, I mean, if you look at the running line, it doesn't look that great, except for this. She was pressed all the way around the track. She had a horse literally right in her throat latch all the way around the track. And those fractions were pretty quick. 23:46 is a pretty quick pace. And yet, at the top of the stretch, she just put that one away and the rest of the field and just drew off. So there's definitely some talent here. This one really looks pretty impressive to me. And the fact that there isn't a lot of early pace in this race, this one could very well get on the lead again and be gone. So I really like Punch Bowl. I think she's an absolute use. And if you want to get bold, you could even single. Defining Purpose is following the Kenny McPeak playbook, just getting a little better with every single start. And that's exactly what she's done. Had some success at the end of the year last year, winning the year's end. She's faced some of the better competition and hasn't done badly until she met Wet Paint. It just really hasn't been able to get past her, although doesn't seem like a lot of fillies can. The slop also may have been an issue. I'm not overly certain, but this one I think maybe has a little more improving to do. It's not often that a horse continues to improve at 2 years old and then all of a sudden, regresses or doesn't get much better at 3. It's only when they're really precocious early at 2 that often they bottom out at 3. So I think this one has a little bit more to offer in the tank. And so I would consider using this one underneath if you could get a decent price. But I don't think with Punch Bowl on the race and Wonder Wheel, I don't think this one is a win candidate. Effortlessly Elegant, say that 3 times fast, is I don't think she's good enough in this one. Her lone effort, it's against State's Company and the Honeybee. She was up the track. Great, it may have been the slop, but if you consider she broke her maiden in the mud, I think that kind of eliminates that excuse. Her last race, she won from off the pace with attractive favorite closes, and those fractions she ran into were pretty slow. And so she was rating kind of a dream trip right behind. And Take Charge Brianna finished second in that race, and she's a D. Wayne Lucas who hasn't really done very much. So I just don't think this one's good enough, and I wouldn't even give one thought to considering her on our pick four ticket. The fourth and final leg of the late pick four at Keeneland is the 10th. It is a maiden special weight for 3-year-old fillies run on the turf at 1 1/8 miles. Our first contestant is the number 1, Robin Sage. I really didn't see much here that would get me terribly excited about this one. So I would not include, particularly being on the rail. Wits and Wagers, kind of the same thing. I really don't see a lot here. It looks to me like they're trying to find a place for this one in the 3-year-old division. Has been competing on dirt and has been running against some fairly decent competition. You see Pretty Mischievous, Towhead, Frosty O'Toole. These are all some pretty good, nice 3-year-olds. And this one hasn't really factored very much against them. So I think this is kind of a desperation move to see if they can find a place for this one. But right now, I'll wait one because I don't think when you have a trainer who's 4% first turf, and the sire and the dam aren't really known for producing turf runners, I think you have to toss this one. Idle Chatter's first race was against what looks to be a really nice turf filly in Grace Darling, and Idle Chatter was no match for her. But she did have a little bit of traffic she had to deal with. But I'll tell you, once she got to the top of the stretch, she had a really nice kick and really sort of exploded, I thought, and kept on even though she didn't have a chance to win because Grace Darling got the jump on her and probably is a better horse. But this one, I think, has room for improvement, and Jack Sisterson's a nice trainer. He's not as well known as some of the others, but he produces good horses. So I like this one in this spot. I'm a little worried there isn't much pace to run to, but I think you have to consider this one because I think there's a lot of upside. So Idle Chatter would be on my win tickets, the number 3 horse. Number 4 is Penumbra's Maker. As soon as I see a horse is 0 for 8, I'm immediately, most of the time, would toss because they haven't figured out how to win. But this one is a bit of an exception for a couple reasons. Number 1, this one has run against some really good competition. Infinite Diamond, Erna, Metaphysical, Mrs. Astor, Love Appeals. Love Appeals and Mrs. Astor were both slated to run in stakes races at Gulfstream last weekend. So this one's run against some pretty good comp and hasn't done badly. I mean, the worst finish she's had is 5th. She's been in the money fairly consistently. And the thing I like is that this one is versatile, can be on the lead or rate. And in this race, there isn't really much early pace signed on. So I think this one, you're probably going to get some value. And this one could very well wire the field for that reason. So why not include it a price? And we'll take our chances. And, if it pays off, then we get a really nice pick 4 out of it. So I think you include the number 4, Penumbra's Maker. Number 5, Costa Bella. Justify is 4% with firsters at 3 and up. And that was a bit of a surprise to me because Justify as a sire has been very precocious. Usually his first-time starters fire really well, but those are mostly 2-year-olds. The 3 and up, not so good. Eddie Keneally is a good trainer, and he's usually pretty good with young horses, but he's only at 8% with turf debut. So despite the fact that Luis Saez is on this one, I don't have enough to build a case that I can safely put this one on a ticket. I think you're going to probably get a halfway decent price, and This one isn't bad, but I think there's better options. So if you like them, use them. But I just for economy of ticket, I would not put this one on the ticket. Heckled is by Michael Stidham, who's at 22% with second-time turf starters. This one is owned by Godolphin. It's got Joel Rosario on. So I think they have some good intentions for this one. Problem is the last race, this one seemed kind of one-paced and didn't look really interested in winning. It just kind of came to the top of the stretch and just was sort of just continued to run. I didn't see any real, they didn't, this one wasn't really set down or had any closing type of kick. So that was what really bothered me about this one. Maybe down the line, this one will turn into a good horse, but I think it's going to take time, and I'm not willing to invest right now. So this one would be off my list. Haystack is trained by Chad Brown. Peter Brandt's his prime turf owner client, and he's got Tyler Gaffalione on him. Warfront's the sire. This one's grass all day long. The thing I like about this one is she's improving steadily. Excuse me. The class level has stayed about the same, 70, 85, 95, 105. I mean, they're roughly the same class level made in special weight. However, she is running at a higher class each and every race. So in other words, her class level is getting better every race, meaning how she's running. So while the class level she's at stays the same, she's running at a higher one. That's the gist of it. Maybe I didn't explain it as clearly enough, but it's improvement and it's progression. And if you look at the class of horses she's running against, Pleasant Passage ran in the juvenile turf, well into some really nice turf horse, as well as Mademoiselle Jackie. That's a pretty good outfit. And she's been holding her own and doing pretty well. So I like Haystack in this one, and I think she's a logical use coming from Chad Brown and coming off a layoff, having progressed previously. Little Miss Moonlight, to me, can kind of be any kind. She's got 3 straight seconds, which is a bit of a concern. Her last race, she did run against a Chad Brown royalty interest who just sort of blew by everybody and drew off. Without a lot of challenge. Miss Moonlight was second, but she really wasn't going to get to the leader. Doesn't appear to be improving terribly much, so I'm a little reticent to consider her. She does have Irad Ortiz on her. That's something to be certain, but there's not enough here for me to get real excited about. I'm hesitant. If you like her, use her, but I want a price, but she's not going to be a win candidate for me. Pettigeek is, the thing that bothers me is the class level that he just ran in. And the reason being is that he had to drop in class to get a better finish. So he was running maiden special weight 70 and 60. Finally, he drops to a maiden 24, and he gets a second. So that kind of tells me that maybe he's not up to snuff with the rest of these, and so I'm not good. I don't see enough here for me to any X factor, any extra factors that would make me want to consider this one. So I'm not going to put him on a ticket. Doral is trained by Bill Mott with his aide rider Joel Rosario. The last 2 he's finished second, and he's been just real close both times. Now, we saw with Little Miss Moonlight, she had 3 seconds in a row, and this one has 2. So you say, well, what's the difference? Well, the difference is the last race I watched, this one had some traffic issues, and probably would have been done if it would have been an average horse. But this one, once she got free, displayed a really big closing kick. And I think this one is only going to get better, especially being in Bill Mott's care. And so I think we can expect a top effort, and I think this one's definitely a win candidate. So Doral is a use. Best performer has faced some good comp, but the thing is, I look at those buyers and I look at the running lines, and I don't really see much improvement. Now, Joe Sharp is a decent trainer and is able to have with James Graham as his jockey. I think they're winning it like 48% over the last 60 days. So that's obviously something you have to take seriously. But I don't see anything else that gets me excited aside from, Oscar Performance is a great turf sire, but that's about it. But I mean, even he produces duds as well. And this one just doesn't excite me. So I'm not going to include. Mischief Lily, I think, is probably relegated to being a pace factor, but from the furthest outside post, the 12 hole, I think that's a very tall task. Considering what you see from her running line, she doesn't look like she would be a contender here. It's a really weird running. If you look at her first three efforts, she seemed to be getting better and moving up, especially as they were stretching out on turf. And then all of a sudden they put her in two synthetic sprints. And I don't know why the hell they would do that when they clearly had this one on a good path. But so maybe it'll turn into a decent claim. I don't know. But I can't see enough. Maybe if you want to try to bust this thing wide open, you throw this one on the ticket, you're probably going to get nice odds. But there's not enough for me here, and I can't see those things that I like to see when I put a horse at big odds on a ticket. So she's a toss for me. We do have also eligibles, as often is the case at Keeneland and Saratoga, particularly on the turf. And this one, we'll go through them quickly. Number 13, Kingmaking, I really didn't see enough to get excited about. Same thing with Silent Story. I think the buyers are light. This probably doesn't match up with these class-wise. However, the one I would consider using is the number 15, Rosie Tomorrows, trained by Mike Maker. And Rod Ortiz is the listed jockey. That's twice. So I guess whoever stays in, he'll get. This one's last race wasn't bad. And just the fact that you got Maker as a conditioner. And I always love horses that draw into races. I think you always have to look out for them, because whenever a trainer has a horse on the AE list, that means he really wants to get him in the race. So generally they run pretty well. And who better than Mike Maker? I think it's logical in the second start here, this one will improve. And so I think if we get enough scratches that Rosie Tomorrows gets in, I think you definitely use. So now we'll take a look and see what our ticket looks like. So here's our pick 4 ticket. It's in the 7th race. We're going to use the 1, 2, and 4. And the key here is we're going to bet against Hijazi. And the reason being is I don't think that the West Coast shippers have not been doing well when they've been leaving California. And Hijazi is proven to be a little bit of a paper tiger. And I'm just not so sure that it's such a lock that he's going to dominate this field. I think there's some classy horses who have run against better competition that may be more viable. And I think they're going to offer better value. In the 8th race, I think it's a wide open turf affair. So we're going to use the 2, 7, 8, and 11. Nagarok, I'm on the fence about, so I kind of included him parenthetically. If you like him and you prefer him to use, or just want to put an extra horse on the ticket, then you think you can do that. In the 9th race, we are going to basically use Wonder Wheel, the number 2, and we're going to use Punch Bowl number 5. And frankly, I think you can single if you choose to with Punch Bowl. I think he's the lone speed. He's very capable of wiring this field. We keep Wonder Wheel on mainly because of her record at Keeneland. And that last race, I think she had a valid excuse because it was a bit of a speed bias. In the 10th race, it's a maiden. It's a turf maiden, and there's a lot of horses in it. And I think we really have to spread. So we're going to use the 3 Idle Chatter. We're going to use the 4 Penumbra Maker as the lone speed with the possibility of wiring the field at a price. We're going to use Haystack, the Chad Brown horse, and we're going to use 10, the Bill Mott horse. And I think that gives us a lot of good options. If the 15 draws in the Mike Maker horse, Rosie Tomorrows, whatever it is, then I would use as well. Now, this is a 3x4x2x4 ticket at a 50-cent pick four betting level. That's a $48 ticket. Certainly using DRF Ticket Maker, using the A and B C matrix, you can get this down to a lower price. There is some chalk in it, which kind of concerns me a little bit about our ROI, but I think we can get some value, particularly in the 8th and the 10th races, which could make for a good ticket for us. So that's our pick four ticket, and it's just it's designed to give you some ideas about how you might want to approach it. And having analyzed the field, I think there's a lot of ways you can go on this ticket. And what's always nice is when you do have possible singles like you do in the Ashland, it does give you a lot of options on the other races. So maybe you can spread a little more boldly if you think the value is there. But I hope this helps you to decide what horses you might want to take some chances with. I wish you the best of luck with your wagering this weekend. And don't forget, we're going to have some videos later this week. We will have them on all three Derby preps, including the Wood Memorial, the Santa Anita Derby, and the Bluegrass Stakes. And by request, I'm also going to come up with a coast-to-coast pick five for this Saturday. And we'll also have some videos about the Keeneland card on Saturday as well as on Sunday. So there's a lot coming up, and I hope you'll be there with us to see all of them. And of course, if you do like what you see, please like and subscribe. And really appreciate you guys hanging in there with us and being part of the community. I love the way this is growing. And again, I do thank you very much for your input. It's very much appreciated. So I'll be talking to you real soon. I'm going to talk to you a lot this week, so I hope you're ready for it. Until then, be well.